Hi, my name is Dave Reski, founder and president of NowSpeed, and welcome to this edition of In the Now, where we
Dave Reski, woohoo!
Hey, Dave, good to see you.
Hey, my name is Dave Will.
Well, welcome, Dave.
Sorry,
Well,
I didn't mean
focusing
to
on this
interrupt. I'm just so
podcast.
excited, Dave.
Yeah, good to have you.
Yeah,
We're,
I'm gonna be a troublemaker, I think.
I think you are, and that's why I have you on the show.
All right, go on with the introduction. It sounded good so far.
All right, so we're focusing on uncovering the myths and misunderstandings of marketing and leadership with some of the world's most interesting people. And my guest today is Dave Will. Dave is a serial entrepreneur, co-founder, and CEO of PropFuel, which is a conversational engagement platform designed to help make communications more human using the simple process: ask, capture, and act. And I hope we can get into that in the conversation a little bit, Dave. Before that, Dave was CEO and founder of Peach New Media, which is an online learning media company focused on helping organizations capture, host, and distribute continuing education content. So, Dave, officially welcome to the show.
Thanks. I love your phrase, some of the world's most interesting people. Like that's a super broad statement. I'm glad to be clustered into that category, but I guess by definition, pretty much anyone could be in that category. So that's a very, very safe introduction to the podcast. Well done.
Thank you, Dave. And coming from you, that's a compliment because you were a podcaster yourself. You've got a great
Yeah.
show. And
EO 360, if you're interested, that's the if you know about Entrepreneurs Organization, that's how Dave and I know each other, but I do the podcast for EO and it's called Entrepreneurs Organization 360. Lots of cool guests on there talking all about um, uh, uh, well, there's thought leaders and then there's some billionaires and there's some people that have created some amazing name brand businesses. Like you ever hear of Reebok?
yeah,
Yeah, so the founder of Reebok, I'm not talking Paul Fireman, but like the founder of the guy who created the name Reebok was on EO 360. That was awesome. Like it was just so cool. He's 85 and just so cool to talk to this guy. It's like talking to grandpa about creating this amazing brand name like Reebok.
yeah, you must have had some great experiences through that. So, but I appreciate you being on the show, and we're going to learn a lot from your experience today. As you know, I like to start these conversations with what I call a mythbuster question. And, is you based on your experience, Dave, what are some myths about entrepreneurship that a lot of people believe are true, but are not really true?
So I really love this question and I'm prepared for it because I know you like to ask that question. And so I've got a few, if that's okay. Is it okay if we,
Yeah.
okay. So the one of them is, and I'm going to start with the easy one that people are going to be like, yeah, no shit, right? This is the really simple one, which is a good idea. And by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, you know this. If you're not an entrepreneur, you might be enlightened by this, but a good idea does not make a good business. How many of us look back on like Facebook or Netflix? We're like, oh my God, I totally had that idea of stream or the iPhone, right? Like I remember I had my Palm Pilot and I also had my StarTech flip phone. And I was like, oh my God, like we've got to put these things together and make one device. Like idea, right? Does that make me Steve Jobs? So my point being, I think the myth is that a good idea does not equal a good business, which is why it's okay when you have an idea to talk about it with people. I think that people are so concerned about when they have a really good idea, they want to keep it in and not talk about it because they don't want anybody to steal their secret idea. They want to get it off the ground, kind of get a head start. Talk it out, man, because good ideas are even better when you can bounce them off each other. So that's the first myth: is a good idea is nothing to be protective of. A good idea is just that. A million people have good ideas. The good entrepreneur is the one that can execute and take that and turn it into $1 million company. Right. So
Yes,
that's the first one.
let's spend a little bit of time on that because that's super powerful. So, what do you do when you have a good idea and you want to be an entrepreneur and you get excited? How do how do you turn that into a business? And that's kind
You
of a low.
talk it out, bruh. Like you honestly, like you talk it out. You find anyone that expresses any kind of interest and you talk it through with them. and you see what their questions are and what their interests are. Like that's the very first step. You have an idea. And I remember before starting Prop Fuel, so you said it earlier, I had a company called Peach New Media. Um, and I sold that in 2015. And then, by 2016, I was ready to do something else. And I think I went through 6 or 7 like legitimate ideas, and all of them, by talking it through with people, I would run into hurdles, and hurdles are fine. We all run into hurdles, but sometime, or walls. Let's use this as an example. You run into a brick wall, right? And sometimes we want to power through it, or go around it, or dig under it, or climb over it. Like sometimes you have the wherewithal and the interest and the desire to break through that wall. When you don't, you hang it up, right? That's when you stop, is you just don't have the interest or the desire or the motivation to go around that particular wall. But if you have an idea and you're talking it through people, now you have all these hurdles and these walls coming at you, and you want to power through it. Now you know you have a good idea. You're gonna hit these walls, right? But talking through it, that's the very first step in my book, at least, is talk through it with as many people as you can. Don't hold it close to your chest. You know how many people, here's a reason why. There was a gentleman we had in our Boston chapter. Oh my goodness, his name is escaping me, but he had tips and tricks for how to manage your network of people. And one of them I thought was really good. One of them was like, make a list of 100 people that you think are influential or helpful to you. And not in a manipulative way, but like just make a list of people you want to stay connected to, and send them a text every now and then with no expectation in mind, so that when you do have something you need from them, you can reach out to them again. And so I thought that was fantastic. But this guy also said that it's talking through ideas with these people that help build better ideas by bouncing back and forth. That's the whole conversation. That's the benefit of conversation. That's the whole value behind what we've created with Prop Fuel. So anyway, that's the first myth, I think, is like, if you got an idea, power. The other thing this guy said. Sorry, I'm all over the place right now. Welcome to my world. This is where I live, by the way. This is what it's like in my head, things bouncing off the walls. The other thing he said was to, if you have a lot of people requesting your time, like Dave, when we spoke before we hit record, I said, hey, I would really love it if you would talk to me and my son about digital advertising and paid advertising. And, like, I'm sure you have a lot of people asking for your free advice. So this guy's thought process was, well, yeah, be happy to give people free advice, but tell them to read something first. Like, read this book, or even read this article, or watch this video. And once you've done that, then reach back out to me. He's like, right away, you've lost 90% of the people. Like 90% of the people will turn themselves away. So take that philosophy to this idea thing. Like, you have an idea, it's a heck of a lot harder to turn an idea into a business than it is to watch a video. So one in, I don't know what the number is, but it's got to be like a million. 1 in a million people that you talk to might actually be a threat in turning it into a business. So back to the myth, you got an idea, talk to people about it. Get some ideas, start brewing on this thing. Let it sit and let it smolder for a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, Dave. Well, so what's the balance though, if you got this idea, right? An idea is not a business, right? But you got this idea and you're talking it out and you're starting to break through those barriers, you just say, what's the balance between that, getting excited and talking about it, and some of the nuts and bolts things you have to do to start the business, right? You gotta incorporate, you've got to hire employees, you've got to get HRs going, you got to start some marketing, you got to do sales, you got to build the product, you got to, you got to do documentation. Well, you got all those nuts and bolts stuff, but you're excited about the idea. How do you kind of bridge those two? And what if you're great at executing the nuts and bolts stuff, but you're not passionate about the idea. I don't know how do you bridge
Oh, well,
those.
you've got to think the idea is cool, right? Like if you don't think the idea is cool, then just go on to something else. Like hands down, there's that. I think that's the message when I said you got to want to break through that wall. And if you get to a point where you're like, yeah, I don't really care about helping interns get jobs enough to break through this wall of creating an intern job site. By the way, that was one of my ideas, and I really didn't care enough about helping interns get jobs to want to break through that wall. But I also don't think you need to do all those things you said, like hire employees. I don't think you need to hire employees yet. That's what you're there for. Incorporate, yeah, it's probably pretty early on. Um, the HR, please. Like, oh my God, I'm 6 years into PropFuel and we're just starting to think about HR. That's not completely true, but like HR, I think you can wing that for at least a year. So where do you start? I think I think that's the hardest part is in the very beginning, figuring out what do I fill my day with? And for me, um, I fill my day with talking to people. And the more you talk to people, the more ideas come out of it. And before you know it, you're going to think of what that MVP is, right? And this is an old concept of now, what is it called? The lean startup. I think I forgot who the author was, but half the audience listening to this right now, those two people. Oh, that was it. That didn't mean that to be insulting. I'm sure more than four people are listening to this.
Next. Yeah, that's good.
Do you ever listen to Smartless, the podcast Smartless? Oh, it's so good. Jason Bateman and two other like a star actors, and they're fantastic. The guests they have on it, and they refer to their audience as listener, as if they have one listener. I think that's so funny. But
Yeah.
I yeah, so I tend to talk to people and then try to imagine what the very simplest version of the product is, and then I find one organization or person to do it with me, usually at no charge. We build some kind of prototype, something that might test out this theory and build on it from there. And, once you got it to a point where that one, two, or maybe five prospects or clients might think there's some value, now maybe you start going out and selling it at a marginal price. That's I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but in my experience, that's how we built PropFuel.
Yeah. No, I think
Started
that makes a
real
lot of sense.
small.
So, as you go into that process, you are going to hit a lot of hurdles. It's going to be
Yeah.
difficult and you're going to hit roadblocks and you're going to talk to people, and not everybody's going to say, "Oh, that's a great idea, Dave. Keep going." Some are going to say, "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You should stop." You're going to get discouraged, you're going to hit roadblocks. How do you maintain that passion over weeks, months, years as you're building that idea into the business, before it's taken off?
Yeah. If you're watching this video, forgive me for turning away from the camera here, but I'm looking on all my books because there's actually a very good book about how to talk to people about your idea to get feedback. And Dave, I'll have to do a little search for this and send it to you. I read it, gosh, like 4 or 5 years ago, I think. Um, and there's some really good tips for how to talk to people so that not everybody does say, "Oh my gosh, this is wonderful." Every now and then you get those people that just want to shoot everything down too, and they're discouraging. They'll just say it sucks, like it's never going to work. Like I don't really know. You talk to people, you're going to get all kinds of feedback. The trick is to um, the trick is twofold, I think. One is to find that product market fit, which is very, very hard. And by the way, I think of the world through software. it's a little bit different in different walks of life, right? Like different types of businesses. If I'm selling running shoes, your product market fit might be easier to find than if you're selling a certain kind of sales and marketing software. Um, but the trick is to find the product market fit, and that can take quite a while. And the way you find it is by figuring out who's willing to pay for it. Right? Not who says they love it. It's who's actually willing to break out a credit card or their wallet or a check, who's willing to pay for it. And I think that's the real trick. And I learned that the hard way with PropFuel. It took us 3 years to find product market fit. It was a tough 3 years, man. And it took us 3 years to figure out what we were selling and who we were selling it to. And the way we discovered that is like, we got a few people to pay for it, but first of all, it wasn't that expensive, and it was really hard to push. And so we knew we hit product market fit when all of a sudden people were writing us rather large checks, and it was coming at us a lot easier. That's when we knew we hit it. So I forgot what the question was, but there's your answer.
Yeah. So it's really about how to maintain that passion. I think it's easier to maintain the passion. Like, I think what you're saying is when you have that, when you know what product market fit is, and you're talking to those people who can really understand the value that you're providing.
But Dave, we love doing stuff that feels good, right? And we love doing stuff that we feel like we're good at. And so if you're doing something and you feel like you suck at it, like selling a product that nobody wants to buy, that's where you start to feel bad. If you're not meeting your goals and expectations, that's when you start to feel bad. And you start to feel good when you hit your goals or exceed your expectations. And I believe the intersection there, what the point where you start to feel good is when you found product market fit. There's a direct correlation. So how do you address the morale? Well, you find that product market fit. So how do you find it? And that's where endurance comes in. That's where persistence comes in. You hear people say, never quit, never give up. But you better be willing to adapt and adjust and pivot. You better not get too married to your idea as it is. Because I think it's the pivoting that allows you to find that product market fit.
Yeah.
Not only in your product, but in the audience and in the messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get the idea, you're trying to find that product market fit, you're driving that forward, and what feels like is going to happen is you're going to have fewer and fewer barriers. It gets easier and easier once you get the right people who you're talking to. People are paying you money. I really resonate with that comment you made, because when I started my first business,
which was what was the first business?
It was kind of a stupid idea back in the early 90s, called Online Computer Market. We thought people would be able to buy computer products through this thing called the internet. I know.
Yeah, that sounds really dumb. Who would do that?
Yeah, exactly. So we went to computer companies and we said, hey, we'd love to help you sell your products online and build a database online. People can use dial-up modems and get to your products and search and sort between manufacturers and then find the best product and buy yours. They said, that was the stupidest idea we've ever heard. Why would we ever put our products next to our competitors' products in a common marketplace where they could shop pricing and wear us down? And that's horrible, because manufacturers had all the power back then because they were selling through salespeople, and it was a whole different world. But what we found, what people would actually pay us to do back in the early 90s was build websites, because they said, listen, this internet thing's going out. Can you build us a website? And so we pivoted from this idea of being an online marketplace to being a website developer, and that worked well. If we'd stuck it out, maybe I would be Amazon instead of a small services company. But hey, those are the choices you make, right?
Well, there you go with the idea versus the execution, right? Like, everybody has the idea to sell books online, but it's the execution that turned him into Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
You're a really good interviewer because what happens is you take us down this path based on something I say, which is awesome. But I want to tell you about one of the other myths. That is it okay? Can I tell you about this second myth? All right. So, and this is one. The first one I told you is one that I've, that's kind of a constant theme in my head, is that good ideas do not equal a good business. That's the first myth to bust. But the second one is actually quite relevant to me right now, and something that I'm just learning after 20 some odd years of being a software entrepreneur. And that is that additional products are not going to have a dramatic effect on your existing client base. Now, again, this is my experience. I've been reading a lot recently in SaaStr and other software newsletters and stuff, that building additional product lines is a really good way to increase your net churn. The idea is to have positive net churn, which means you're actually upselling existing clients more than you're losing clients. So your NRR, net revenue retention, is going to be over 1, not under 1. And so anyway, a pretty cool concept, really hard to do. And so, our company, we just came out with a new product that we're selling, and we thought for sure we'd get 10-15% of our base to buy it almost right off the bat, and we didn't. And we're thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening? So here's my looking back on this. This concept is a little bit new. The myth being, create new products and people will buy them. Here's my theory, though. I think when you get a customer or a client, they're buying what you have. To sell them on other things is just as difficult as selling your product to new clients. It's a new sale altogether, practically. You might have the inroads, you might have a warm lead, but you're still selling another product. Where I think additional products help a business is in new clients. If you can go to new clients saying, we got this, and I'll wrap together, it creates this 1 + 1 = 3 sort of thing. It creates this beautiful package. That's where the opportunity lies. So the myth being that new products are going to help you upsell to your existing base. True, but with a grain of salt.
So in that
Was
case,
that clear, or was that foggy? I feel like that was really unclear.
I think it was clear, and I think we'll explore it some more. So do you think that it's better to create a product that together with your existing product lets you go after whole new markets? Or are you saying, is that what you're saying? Or is it better to create a product that you think is just a complement to your existing customer base, and you're just going to try to continue to upsell them, but recognizing that it's a whole new sale?
Yeah, I think the latter. It scares me a lot to go into new markets,
Mhm.
and because I think I'm a huge believer that the niches is the riches are in the niches, right? So if you can solve the problems, some very specific problems for a very specific group of people, you're going to be able to do it way better than those organizations that are trying to solve a similar problem for a much larger group of people.
Yeah. So
Right. So riches are in the niches. But so therefore, sorry to interrupt, but I got to get this concept out because I know I'll forget it. But I think what I'm suggesting is that selling backwards, you create a new product for the same niche, selling backwards is equally as difficult as selling forwards. And by selling forwards, I mean finding new clients and incorporating this new product into your value proposition moving forward. And so that's what I'm saying is, yeah, you're going to get some of your older clients buying that stuff. But I think rather than trying to upsell existing clients, the energy maybe should be focused on adding this to your existing value proposition for new clients in your niche.
that makes a lot of sense. So with Prop Fuel, who's your best customer? Who's
Mm.
a niche that you really serve very well?
So let me tell you what the platform is, and then that'll create a little more clarity
Mhm.
for who our customer is. Um, a lot of organizations, especially member-based organizations, like an association, like EO is a member-based organization. Dave, you and I pay dues to belong to this association of entrepreneurs. Insurance companies, the insurance men and women pay money to be a part of an insurance association. Lawyers join bar associations. Um, uh, Nurses and doctors join medical societies. So these are all member-based organizations. You know, Netflix is a member-based organization too. REI. I'm not sure if all the listeners are familiar with REI. I'm not sure if that's a regional camping store, but camping equipment. They have a member, it's a co-op, it's a member-based organization. You look at clubs and gyms and golf courses, these are all member-based organizations, right? So you have people that are associated to these organizations. So that's the foundation, that's our audience base. The product, though, most of these organizations, the way they communicate to people is by telling them things, because that's the easiest way to get the word out is we tell people things. And we used to do that through snail mail back in the 60s, 70s, right? You do that through snail mail. And then the fax machine came out and you'd fax stuff out to people. And then the internet came out and email came out, and you'd start emailing people, and then email marketing came out, and then marketing automation came out. But all of this stuff just makes it easier and easier to create a broadcast message. And now with marketing automation, we've been able to do broadcasts from everyone down to segments or personas. That's as far as we've gotten in terms of being able to communicate to people in the past 30, 40 years, is just better ways of broadcasting. PropFuel is trying to change that perspective from broadcasting and talking at people like I'm doing right now, rather than talking and lecturing at people about your products and the things that you think might be good for them based on what you know about them. Why don't we just ask them a question? Right? So just ask them, what's something you're working on this year? What's a goal you have this year? Like, so our audience are associations. If somebody joins an association, like suppose a new entrepreneur finds out about EO, and EO, now they join EO, EO sends them a note saying, look at all this great stuff EO does. We have conferences, you can travel around all around the world. We have forums, we have educational content all over the place. You should do some of that. Have fun. That's kind of what, oh, and by the way, fill out your profile. That's kind of what most organizations do, is they broadcast, they tell stuff. What PropFuel will do, and the platform we provide it's email and SMS. It's a platform that sparks conversation by asking questions. Welcome to EO. We're so glad you joined. Why did you join? What was intriguing about EO for you? And then they answer that question. Usually it's like multiple choice, something they're click on in that email. Well, I joined for the forum experience. Oh, you joined for the, now you have something that they said that you can target and actually spark a conversation of. So a lot of this is automated. Oh, you like the forum experience? That's why 80% of our members join. Check out all these cool things you can do as it relates to your forum. And we do all this other stuff too. But you talk to them about what they're interested in. And that's what PropFuel does. PropFuel sparks a conversation with people by asking questions in order to find out what that individual's experience is, so that you can spark a dialogue back and forth. It does not replace Constant Contact or MailChimp or any of the marketing automation systems. It's supplementary to create this choose your own adventure book sort of experience with people.
So, Dave, as you kind of went through the journey of building the product and launching it and making the idea a reality and a successful product, how
Oh
long
man,
did it
I'm
take you?
afraid of what you're going to ask. Go on.
How long did it take you to find that niche of associations? Because lots, you could do this with governments, You could do this with companies. You could do this with school districts. You could.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Found
right. I know.
how long did it take you, and how did you get to the point where you said, "Well, our best customer is this niche of associations"? How
Well,
long?
actually, it didn't start with this idea. The challenge for us was not what niche do we take this to. That's a current challenge of when do we go after clubs, when do we go after nonprofit foundations, when do we go after schools, you know, like that's when do we go after alumni associations, like all of these organizations, when do we go after businesses that want to have a stronger relationship with their customers, like their members, right? So like there's so much opportunity for organizations that are so used to broadcasting stuff to create a stronger connection with their constituent. And that's what we're trying to do. The trick there is, how do we really do it well for one of those groups? Now, the reason we chose associations is because my last company worked with associations, and so we knew them well, we knew the market, we knew the people, and it's a ripe enough market so that we knew this is a big problem we could solve for them. And so now what we're doing is we're very, very focused on working with associations, and it's a real challenge to figure out, like, when do we step into another category? Because as soon as we do, we're going to run into other systems that we need to integrate with. We're going to run into other problems that our clients want to solve. We're going to run into different messaging based on their issues. Like the YMCA or a golf course is going to think about their members in a different way than Entrepreneurs Organization does, or the North Carolina Bar Association. So, but here's what really happened. We started PropFuel as an employee recognition software platform, totally different than what it does right now. And that it was pretty good. Like, I really liked that software, but there's just too many other options for entrepreneurs to choose from. And so that we would have had to work much, much harder to create a much richer platform for people to warrant paying more money for. We were struggling to get people to pay $25 a month, you know, for employee recognition software. And so we tried customer success. You know, that's a little riper, a little more valuable, because now we're dealing with people's revenue, not a cost center. We're dealing with customers and helping do better with customers. But even that was challenging. It did a little bit better. And what we realized at that point, knowing associations, was, well, associations have a customer called a member, and they need to do a better job of engaging their member. And so that's when we turned it into a member engagement platform for associations centered around what we call conversational engagement. And that process was 3 years. It took us 3 years to go from day one to really finding what I believe is our product market fit.
Yeah,
and now we're 6 years into it.
And those are very big decisions. A lot of these are like bet the company decisions, like which
it's not a big decision when you're not selling anything. It really isn't. Like, Dave, it's one of these things where you're like, well, shit, we just spent 6 months trying to sell employee engagement, or a year, even worse. We spent a year trying to sell employee engagement, and we're like at, you know, $5,000 monthly recurring revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. Honestly, like $60,000 company. After a year, we got 2 people that are trying to live off of this. So no, it was not a big decision. It was a very easy decision. Decision is what do we pivot to, or how do we shut this down?
Yeah. Well, you're pivoting in the right direction.
We did it. But that's the key, I think, for any organization that is finding their product market fit. If you quit at that point, you're lacking endurance.
Yeah.
But if you stay with what you're doing too long, you're lacking intelligence.
Right.
So you got to balance the brawn with the brains, and when you're pivoting to try to find market fit.
It strikes me it's the same issue when you're expanding the product line as well, right? So when do you stay focused one product, let's go deep, deep, deep into this one product, one market, or expand multiple products to the same market or multiple products to multiple markets. Making good decisions about that is really hard and super important. So
Yeah, that you just made it super complicated. I mean, and if I look at your business, like you're doing these things where you're bringing in other businesses, you're growing through acquisition, you're buying other businesses. It just complicate things dramatically now to have multiple brands that you're trying to bring together into one value proposition. Like that's, I mean, when we have this conversation, do you start thinking about how that works?
oh yeah, I can make my business very complicated very quickly because
Right.
like
I know.
our core services are digital advertising, website development, SEO, marketing automation. There are other firms that just do one of those things. So we could make a choice to just do one of those things, but we think serving our customers well, we need all of those things. But in marketing, there's 50 other things to do. There's influencer marketing. There's PR, there's market research, there's dozens and dozens of other disciplines in marketing that we could add to other product lines. And then there's dozens of niches that we could really focus on. So I think, one of my biggest jobs, our job really as leaders, is making those choices, kind of the narrow, almost like what's the narrowest set I can put together and the fewest niches I can focus on to be successful.
So Dave, I took about 7 or 8 minutes to tell you what our value proposition was. How would you describe your value proposition if you have, like you're not focused on one thing, you're doing four things in the marketing world, but you're not doing all 10 things that marketing's been. Like, what's your value proposition? How do you bundle that into a message?
Well, Dave, fortunately, this is my podcast, and so we're going to save that question for when I'm on your show.
I'm
So,
dying to know.
yeah,
Like that's the core of our conversation, though, is product market fit and messaging. Messaging is a big part of that. And to your audience, those four things might be the most important thing to them in the marketing suite. Maybe that's why you selected those. And so that's a cool conversation, though.
well, we're going to have that conversation either on this show or on your show.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was a great conversation, Dave. Thank you so much for being part of this today. I love this the topic of like how ideas turn into businesses and where how you do that. I love your approach to conversational approach, and I love the way your product makes that happen in the markets that you serve. That's really cool. You've done
Can I make one recommendation before we wrap?
yeah.
So I just read this book recently. It's called Ownership Thinking. I have no affiliation with this guy, by the way. Brad Hams, Ownership Thinking, HAMS. He's in this. There's actually another myth I think that he puts in here that I think is really interesting. By the way, Ownership Thinking: How to End Entitlement and Create a Culture of Accountability, Purpose, and Profit. One thing he says in this book is, or one of the themes he makes in this book is about educating your employees on how business works,
Hmm.
right? Like income statements and balance sheets and how do those work, and what is profit and what is cash flow, and how when we sell a product, whether it's $100 or $100,000, like when you sell a product, what happens to that money? If you were to ask employees around the US, what percentage of every dollar in the door goes to the owner, they will all guess this outrageously high number. Not all of them, but the vast majority of them will guess a very, very high number. And so this guy, Brad Ham, says, well, we need to educate employees so that they understand that owners aren't getting $100,000 when a $100,000 client comes in the door. So anyway, I wanted to share that. I think that was a really interesting myth to bust.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we can have another conversation about that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Anyway, Ownership Thinking, Brad Hams, one of my favorite business books as of 2022, 2023 era.
Awesome. I'll check it out. Well, Dave, thanks again for being part of the show today. Really appreciate you taking the time. Everyone, if everyone wants to check out your podcast or learn more about your company, how would they get in touch with you?
So the podcast, you can go to any podcast player, Spotify, Apple, and just look for Entrepreneurs Organization 360 or EO 360 with Dave Will. And in terms of reaching out to me, if you're curious about PropFuel, you can go to the website, www.propfuel.com. And if you want to reach out to me, I'd love to hear from you. I'm dave@propfuel.com.
Excellent. Well, Dave, again, thanks for taking the time. Great interview, great conversation, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.